Action.
Fabulous. Wow, you guys have a lot more energy than I do. So, you guys can just like rub that off on me. That'd be great. Alright, so, we're in this series called Break Trail. Now, okay, today was really beautiful outside. Did anybody get outside and enjoy it? Fabulous. I did not. I decided to take a nap instead. But I'm sorry. I just really needed a nap. Otherwise, I would be teaching to you guys from like a fetal position on the stage. So, now when you guys are outside in nature, it's pretty common, I feel like. Hey, boys in the back. Thanks. Oh. It's a common thing, I think, for us to be taken by surprise by a wild creature. Has that ever happened to you guys? I mean, you guys know my like bird story. I'm not gonna go into that again. But maybe you've had a similar experience with a bird dive bombing you, maybe stealing your snack, or maybe, you know, if you're out hiking in the woods, you like see like an animal, a bear or a mountain lion or a bobcat or something. Or maybe like you like get something like that brushes on your, and you're like, oh, it's a leaf, and then you're like, it's like a spider that's that big. Or you're like strolling along and then all of a sudden a snake. There was one time so just because I'm going, like next week, spring break, I gotta go on spring break like this week, so that's exciting. And I'm going back to the happiest place on earth, which is like my favorite place in the world. But there was this one time that I was in line for the Jungle Cruise at Disney. And, you know, this is like a ride that you go on and you go through like a riverboat cruise or whatever. If you saw Jungle Cruise the movie, it's kind of like that, but just less like rapidy. It's safe, and the animals aren't real. Except one time I was in line, and then all of a sudden, like just a snake, like went across, and I was like, I thought this was Disney, and there wasn't supposed to be live snakes here. But needless to say, it just got back to its home in the jungle, and everything was good. But when we're out in nature, a lot of times we are very aware of the living things that are around us. And a lot of animals have the ability to blend into their surroundings for protection, and so sometimes they're hard to spot. But even indoor animals might have the ability to camouflage themselves. And so I have a couple of slides up here, and I'm gonna see if you guys can figure out which one is which. So this first one, which one of these is a poodle and which one is fried chicken? If you think the poodle is on the left, raise your hand. If you think poodle's on your right, raise your hand. All right, let's see it. Oh, there you go. Okay, or how about this one, this next one? Which one is a husky and which one is a bagel? Okay? If you think I said it wrong, you can complain later. Okay, if you think the left is the husky, raise your hand. If you think right is the bagel, right is the husky? What did I do? Right is the husky, raise your hand. Okay, all right, Whitney, standing strong. Okay, sorry. All right, how about this one? Which one is, parrot or guacamole, okay? So if you think the left side is a parrot, raise your hand. If you think the right side is a parrot, raise your hand. All right, let's see it. Oh, nice, okay. How about this one? A kitten or a caramel sundae?
Where do you see
a kitten or a caramel sundae? Okay, who thinks the left side is a kitten? Who thinks the right side is a kitten? And let's see it. Oh, all right. Okay, last one. Is it a chihuahua or a blueberry muffin? All right, left side, chihuahua. Right side, chihuahua. All right, let's see it. Yeah. You guys did pretty well with that. So, we are in this series, right, where we're talking through Easter, which it feels like it's so far away, but it's really not. It's going to be here in just a couple of weeks. And so you guys might see where I may be going with talking about the being surprised that something is alive. And so for the last couple of weeks, we've kind of been on this journey. So in week 1, we talked about how Jesus was betrayed by his friends on the night of his arrest. And then the second week, we talked about how Jesus was beaten and tortured and mocked and understands pain that we feel as he was experiencing these things on his way to the cross. And then last week, Mr. Dieter was here and he talked about how we saw Jesus on the cross in kind of his last moments before his death. So today, maybe you guys have kind of followed the story, and if you know where we're going to be going, we're going to be talking in celebration of Easter, what happened next. So I'm guessing that maybe some of you guys already know what happened after Jesus was killed, because it's what Easter Sunday is all about, what our faith is built on. So after 3 days, Jesus rose from the dead. But before we get there, I want us to think about what it might have been like for Jesus' friends and his followers before they knew the good news of the resurrection. Right? We get this awesome thing where we get to read the story and we don't even have to wait for the next week's episode to come out. We have it right there. I know you guys don't even really know what that means because Netflix and binging is a real thing, but we have the ending of the story right here. But Jesus' friends and followers, they had to wait. And I am not a patient person. I'll be honest with you about that. I could not have imagined what it would have been like to wait those 3 days. And they didn't even know that it was just going to be 3 days. Even though Jesus kind of alluded to it, they were not picking up what he was saying. And so they waited. This leader who they believed, they thought was the Son of God, he had died. And now your life is in danger too, because other people are persecuting you. This movement that you were a part of seems to be over. Everything that had given your life hope and purpose, you're just kind of I don't know if this is still a thing. I don't know what's going on. So in those moments, in those days, I'm sure some of them probably felt pretty hopeless. And maybe you guys have been in a situation before in your life where you felt hopeless. Whatever that may look like, you just felt I don't see how this can get better. And in our lowest and most hopeless moments, it often seems impossible to imagine a way out for us. We feel like we're stuck in there. But again, this series is all about breaking trails, and that's what Jesus did. He was in the business of breaking trails like nobody else. And so we're going to see how Jesus broke the trail on a path to hope. So on this last stop towards Easter, we're not done with this series quite yet. We're going to kind of see some so whats in the next week or so. But on this last stop, as we've been traveling to Easter, we left with Jesus' body being taken down from the cross and prepared for his burial. And while his close friends and family were mourning this loss, right? Again, they didn't know what was coming just a few days from then. And in Jewish culture, it was customary when somebody died to visit their grave, their tomb on the third day, and they would prepare the body. They would put spices and oils on it to honor them, but also to help with the smell, because it didn't smell very good either. And so these three women went to the tomb on this third day after Jesus had died to treat the body of Jesus. And again, all things considered, right? The women went and they expected to find Jesus in the tomb and for him to be dead, right? That's what they were expecting as they went there. And so this was a sad and somber and overall hopeless situation, right? Again, everything they had put their faith and trust and hope in, they felt like it was all gone. So they were going to grieve and to mourn this loss. But we're going to pick up in Luke 24, right off in verse 1 on resurrection morning. It says, "On the first day of the week, very, very early in the morning, they came to the tomb, bringing the spices they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. They went in, but did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly two men stood by them in dazzling clothes. So the women were terrified and bowed down to the ground. 'Why are you looking for the living among the dead?' asked the men. 'He is not here, but he has risen. Remember how he spoke to you when he was still in Galilee, saying, "It is necessary that the Son of Man be betrayed into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and rise on the third day." And they remembered his words. Returning from the tomb, they reported all of these things to the 11 and to all the rest. They were telling the apostles these things, but these words seemed like nonsense to them, and they did not believe the women. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. When he stooped to look in it, he saw only the linen cloths. So he went away, amazed at what had happened. So again, the women went to this tomb expecting to see Jesus' body there, but they didn't. And instead, these men, or they're probably angels, appeared to tell the women that the person that they were looking for, he wasn't dead at all. He was in fact alive. Now, could you imagine the shock that these women were experiencing in that moment, right? You are going to see somebody that you had watched die, and you walk up to this tomb, and he's gone. And these angels are telling you he's not dead. Even though you watched him die, he's not dead, but he is in fact alive. When they started thinking through these things that like the angels pointed out again, like he said, he told you, like these things are necessary, right? And it's starting to click for them that, oh, so that's what he was talking about when he was saying, right? The pieces are starting to come together. But even then, right, it's still hard to believe because sometimes our mind just can't piece these things together completely. And even Peter, who is like, he's kind of like the gung-ho, he's the first to get excited, and he jumped up and ran to the tomb, but even then, like, he's still kind of like, he's amazed, but also maybe a little, some other translations say that he walks away wondering, right? He sees the empty tomb, but he's in awe, he's in wonder of, okay, what is really going on here? So can you blame Jesus' followers, his friends, for this disbelief, for their confusion or hesitation in believing, right? How many of you guys feel like you'd be the same way where you're like, is somebody pulling a prank on me? Like, I watched him die. Like, I watched that happen. Like, how? Like, I would be so confused. So it makes sense why they had trouble grasping this. So now I'm going to flip gears for a minute and talk about another kind of trailblazer in more recent years. So in 2010, there was a big disaster in the country of Chile. And there were 33 miners that went to work on a normal day, like going to work underground, just like they did every other day, and then something that they weren't expecting to happen happened, and there was a giant collapse. So the ground shifted, and a rock that was like bigger than a skyscraper like collapsed over their one pathway out. And so they were completely trapped below the ground in the dark. They had limited food and supplies. And also, if you're trapped underground, what else are you lacking? What eventually is going to run out? Oxygen, right? Your air is eventually going to run out. So if there was ever a moment that these people were that have felt hopeless, like that was probably one of those moments for them, right? They knew they had limited supplies. They knew the air was going to run out before too long, and so they probably felt hopeless. But after 70 days of planning and innovating and failing and succeeding and a whole lot of drilling, an international team of miners and scientists had a breakthrough. So they drilled a hole that reached deep into the earth to the place where the miners were stuck, and then they built this extraction tube to rescue them. And this device could only pull one miner up at a time, and it took about 15 minutes for that one miner to make the way to the surface, right? So a man named Florencio Avalos was the first one to make this trip. Now remember, these guys are stuck underground. Like, this is something that they tried to find a solution to forever, and they finally came up with this idea. Do you think they had the opportunity to test it out? No. So once they got this all set up, no one was even confident. Like, they weren't sure if it was going to work. They weren't sure if he was going to survive. Like, they had never tried this device before. It was something brand new. And so these families of the miners sat in anticipation watching, and the scientists and media outlets from all over the world were watching, as you can see, him making his descent. And after Florencio broke the trail, survived the first tube ride, every single one of those miners followed in his footsteps to the surface too. And so he blazed a new trail for his fellow miners, and it was a trail that literally took them from death to life, right? If they wouldn't have found a way out, they wouldn't have survived. And so they were willing to follow their lead. Now, maybe you guys are starting to see where this connection is going with the Easter story. Again, this tube took them from a physical death that was impending on them to life. And the story of Easter, Jesus' resurrection, takes us from a different place of death to life, right? We are given, when we choose to follow Jesus, when we choose to believe what happened on Easter Sunday so many years ago, we get to receive this new life that God has for us. We're able to be made alive again, and seeing dead things come back to life is what Jesus is all about, right? Jesus is alive. The story about Easter is seeing him go from death and that hardship of, again, not being able to imagine what that was like for those days of waiting, but then to see Jesus is alive, and with Jesus, we have the opportunity to be alive as well. With God, any hopeless situation that we're in can turn for the better. He is the ultimate source of hope. Anything dead can come back to life again. With Jesus, there's truly no such thing as hopelessness. I know for me, like, as we've walked through these last, whatever it is, 2.5 years now, with COVID and everything that's been going around, like, with that, I know that's a place where I often say, I don't know how people walk not knowing Jesus through this time, because he is where I have hope. I know that even when things are really, really bad here and right now, I know that there's hope for something better in the future. Now, I've kind of a funny video, maybe, to show you guys. So, with Jesus, I sometimes feel a little bit like this mouse. So, you can go ahead and play that video.
I knew if I didn't get that little guy out of that trench, he was going to die from exposure.
Basically, mammals, they get caught in the trenches that they dig out here, and they're building roads and also building pipelines. As it gets freezing cold out in the desert, these animals go into a state of torpor. Now, it's basically like a deep sleep that they do, basically to conserve energy and stay warm. But shows just about no signs of life at all. And most people would just presume that was a dead animal.
Once he started to wiggle around, I knew he was okay.
Oh, hello. Good morning.
Look at that! Wow! Whatever, he's so cute! He's a cute little guy. So cute. So this, you might be wondering, like, okay, like, again, what does this have to do with anything that we're talking about? But that mouse was in a hopeless situation, right? He was stuck in this trench, and his body basically, like, kind of shut down to try and survive, but really nothing was going to happen. His situation wasn't going to improve unless somebody bigger and more powerful came to rescue him and intervene. So honestly, this video really resonates with me, not just because, you know, he's super cute and so am I, and we both really like to take naps. That's not why I relate to it, but it's because we're all stuck in that state of hopelessness where we are born as sinners, and unless we have somebody step in and intervene for us, we won't have the type of life that we were created for. So there might be areas in your life that maybe you're feeling hopeless with. Maybe it's your faith. You feel like it's just stuck and not going anywhere, or you feel like you've been struggling in your relationship with God, or maybe you feel like you don't have hope for what the future holds, or maybe you're feeling hopeless about the world that we live in because there's so much darkness there. Maybe you're feeling hopeless in some of the relationships that you have. You see people around you struggling with things that you just don't know if they're going to get better. And it's not easy to hold on to hope when things feel so dark around us. But Jesus is alive, and we get to hold on to the hope of him in our lives. When we choose to step towards him, we get to embrace the hope that those believers got when they saw him alive again. So I don't know what the future holds. None of us do. But I believe that Jesus can do things that none of us would expect. There's no prayer that's too big for the one who died and decided not to stay dead. He can die and come back to life. Imagine the things that he can do for each one of you in your lives. So there's lots of things in our lives that we can't bring life to on our own. But thanks to Jesus, we have an opportunity that our lives don't have to remain dead or lost or hopeless, but we can have new life right now as we walk here on earth, but we also get to hope for a life beyond this one when we get to spend eternity with him in heaven. So yes, Jesus died, right? Last week, that's the story we talked about, but that's not the end of the story. Jesus is alive and he wants each of us to be in relationship with him. He wants us to have the same hope that he gave those early believers. So if you guys maybe haven't ever stepped into that relationship, if you haven't accepted that hope before, I want everyone to just close your eyes and bow your heads. I'm going to say a prayer, and if this is something that you're like, okay, I feel this is true. Something's stirring inside of you. You guys can pray this after me. But also, if you still have questions, if you're unsure, you don't have to pray it right now. I'd love to talk to you later to have an opportunity to get your questions answered. But if you feel like this is your next step, if you feel like this is the hope that you've been looking for, you can repeat after me. God, thank you for sending your son to earth. God, I choose to believe that he is who he says he is, that Jesus is your son. God, that he came and died on the cross for my sins. Lord, you provide an opportunity for a healed relationship. So God, I choose to seek your forgiveness. God, I receive your forgiveness. And I put my trust and my faith and my hope in you. God, we're so grateful for this opportunity that you provide us to have a relationship with you. I pray this all in your name. Amen. So again, if you guys haven't made that decision before, if you have questions about that, please come and talk to me. If that's a decision maybe you made for the first time tonight or are wanting to make for the first time tonight, again, come and talk to me because I'd love to be able to chat more with you about that and celebrate with that with you, because it is something to celebrate. So I love you guys. I hope that you have a fabulous spring break this week or next week for those of you guys who get it. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.